Welcome to Be the Light 365. I'm Pastor Jake. Today we're going to talk about Luke 6:43 through 45. For a good tree bringeth not forth corrupt fruit, neither doth a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. For a tree is known by its own fruits. For of thorns men do not gather figs, nor a bramble bush gather thy grapes. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasures of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. And this is one, I love this passage because this is the people we have to look at in our lives. People that we hang around with, people that we call family sometimes friends. We have to watch who we hang out with, because sometimes we can get with people and it changes our perspective. Like I know when I was younger, we were very impressionable about when we get around friends, we want to show out and act a fool. Let's just put it that way. But the truth is we have to watch ourselves being Christians and being a child of God. We have to watch this because evil will come in and creep in. The devil is always trying to find a way into your life, no matter what you're doing. And that's why we got to put a barrier up, and we got to distance ourselves from this. Another one is the neighbor. And I'm not going to read the whole passage. It's in Luke 10:27 through 37. So I'm going to summarize this, the Good Samaritan. But what it's talking about, first Jesus is sitting there talking, and I'm going to go ahead and read the first few lines. And he saith, and answered and said, that thou shalt love thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. And this lawyer, politician, he was sitting there talking to Jesus, and he says, well, who is your neighbor? And Jesus tells him, okay, well, I'm going to tell you a story. He said there was a Samaritan. And this Samaritan, he was going on a trip, and during this trip, he gets robbed, beaten, and almost killed, and left on the side of the road dead. But, during this time, there was 3 people came by him, a priest and another Levite and another Jewish man came by, but they just looked at him and went the other way, or they went on the opposite side of the road and left this man to die on the side of the road is what they were doing, who just ignored it. And along came a Samaritan, which Samaritans didn't deal with Jews. They were outcasts. Samaritans were outcasts of the Jews, so they did not mingle at all. You weren't allowed to be even around them. Well, the Samaritan came, cleaned this man up, took care of him, bandaged him up, put him on his donkey, and went to an inn and set him up and got him there and got him fresh and got him medical attention. And then the next day, the guy gave the innkeeper money and said, take care of him. And if he owes you any more, I'll pay it. And Jesus, at the end of it, Jesus says, of those that fell among the thieves, he said, he who shows mercy on him, then Jesus said unto him, go and do likewise. In other words, your neighbor is the person that's going to do good to you and not do you wrong. Now, it's hard to say, because we think of a neighbor as the person next door. But it's not in this, what God's telling. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, that's because you're supposed to love everybody and do everybody right. But those that will not do you right, you're supposed to distance yourself from them. Because if they start doing you wrong, they take advantage, and you don't need this. And God knew this. God knows people, and he knows people's hearts. Because then it makes anger come in your heart because somebody does you wrong. Then you're going through these emotions, and God says, I'm trying to stop you from going through this. So the next one I'm going to read you, and this one's come close to my home and everywhere else. It's in Mark 3:31 through 35. There came then his brother and his mother and standing without sent for him, calling him. And the multitude said unto him, Thou said unto him, Behold, thy mother and thy brother without seeketh thee. And he answered and said, Who is my mother or my brethren? And he looked around at them who sat about him, and said, Behold, my brothers, my mother, and my brethren. For whoever shall do the will of God is the same as my brother, mother, sister. And I love this because these are the people that will do the will of God. That's your brothers and sisters. I've had family members in my lifetime that have done me wrong. I do forgive them because that's what we're supposed to do. Forgive them, but that don't mean I have to hang around with them. I love them, but I can love them from a distance. And the reason why is because it keeps me from having bitterness against anybody. And I don't want bitterness in my heart. I don't want anything in my heart that separates me from God. So I have to go through the whole thing of just distance myself. And if I don't talk to them, and eventually I have to go on. Because if I don't, it just brings me down. It hurts me. And it keeps me from doing God's will, because then I'm dwelling on things or getting angry about stuff I shouldn't be getting angry about. So I love this passage because this is who our mother, brothers, and sisters are. These are people that do the will of God, is our mother and brothers and sisters. And I'm not talking about a person sitting next to you at church, because a person at church, you don't know their heart. And I've had a lot of people say this to me over the years. Well, I got hurt by people at church. Well, yeah, because they're just people. You know, people are going to hurt people, because some people that are sitting in that pew maybe not be a great child of God, or even a child of God. I hate to say that, but we have to make sure the people that we're hanging around with, the people we're talking to, and the people that we're that we're letting in our lives are people of God. That's not to say that we can't talk to nobody. Say, hey, you don't need to be doing this, or you don't need to be doing that, or we don't have to be judgmental is what I'm trying to say. We just need to sit back and say, well, I know they're not doing right, so I've got to step back away from them, because if I don't, they can corrupt me. And that's where we come to the next passage I'm coming to, is 1 Corinthians 15, 33 through 34. Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. Awake to righteousness and do not sin. For some do not know the knowledge of God. And I speak to this your shame. And I love this passage because what it's telling us is that those people that we shouldn't be hanging around with, we need to tell them, look, I can't hang around with you because you're doing this. And it's not right, and I cannot be around. If they get mad, they're going to get mad. You can't stop a person from getting mad. You cannot be in the middle of anything they're going through, because a lot of times you can take the burden, and you can carry the burden for so long, and then you're going to be brought down. And it's kind of like a person drowning. I always heard this. When a person's drowning, you don't want to just swim up to them, because they can drown you. And that's why we have to step back away from people and say, look, you're not doing right, man. The Bible says this, and I can't hang around with you because of that. I hate to say it, but you're doing wrong, and I cannot be into this. I cannot have my heart into something that's not right. Because the heart is where your treasure is. The passage we read a little bit is your treasure should be God. And our heart should be focused on God. It should, but that's why the Bible says do not sin and do not keep sinning, because the sinning is just kind of lowers you and lowers you and lowers you to your sinking. So tonight, what I'm trying to explain is always watch who you're around. Even though they're family, they could be family, they could be friends, they could be neighbors, they could be anybody, but always watch who you're hanging around with and look at the fruits they're putting out. If every time that you get around them, they're a lot of things not feeling right, then just back away. You might hurt their feelings, but also it tells you to back up from a brother or sister, because it lets them know that they're doing wrong, and that they have a choice in which way they want to go. They can be mad at you, which you might not like, but in the end, it's better to be not liked and them not knowing that they're doing something wrong. Because that says, because the passage we just read says that that's our shame because we didn't do anything. Because a lot of people like to ignore things and not take it serious. Oh, well, we'll just forget it. They'll get over it. We'll just put it behind us. Well, that's okay, but in the end, we have to stand in front of God. And God said, well, why didn't you tell them? Why didn't you say something to them? Why didn't you do anything? Instead of you just ignored it. Because a lot of people just love to ignore things. And sometimes when you're ignoring things, you let the little bit of sin in that can destroy somebody's life. So those that are family or friends or anybody in our life, co-workers, does not matter. A person at church, if we're doing something and you know it's not right, sometimes it's better for us to say something and say, look, well, or distance ourselves. Because by distance ourselves, we let them know that we're not approving of what they're doing. We don't have to judge them because the word says it will judge a person. But we have to shield ourselves from evil. Because if we get into it, we are very corruptible. We are sinful. Jesus can do it because Jesus is the Son of God. But we're not. We are the children of God. And our lives have to be an example. And if we're doing something evil and they're showing a person at church that some of the young people that, hey, well, it's okay to do that because brother what's his name's doing it and he's a man of God. Well, then that's, that's not good because we're leading by example. And we should be good Christians and lead and be elders. Why they call them elders is because an elder should be doing a good example. So let us always do good. Let us always move forward and to do the will of God. Because the will of God is what's important. Because a lot of people will say, well, you're just being judgmental. You're just doing this. You're not doing what God. Well, yes, you are, because God tells you separate from a brother who's not doing right. God tells you who your mother and father and brothers and sisters are. He tells you the person that does the will of God. And that's all we need to do is do the will of God, because the will of God will keep us safe and from harm. No matter how bad it hurts sometimes we always have to do what God says, because God has the right thing. And let's just follow by his example and what he says. I thank you. I hope you have a blessed week.